What you are listening to now is the Central Indiana Sports Report podcast number 302.4, the IU Report with Grant Shouse. And this was just two people talking IU basketball, football, and some high school basketball as Grant and I were at Carmel High School taking in the Charlie Hughes Invitational, the biggest summer event in varsity boys basketball. But there's a lot of noise in the background, some sound issues that I will learn and grow from. It shouldn't be anything major. Check it out.
You're listening to the Central Indiana Sports Report with your host, Greg Mengelt.
Welcome, IU fans, to the Central Indiana Sports Report. For our first IU report for a while, Grant, I'm your host, Greg Mengelt. With me is Grant Shouse, our IU guy. And we're going to just kind of wing it because you and I are both here at the Charlie Hughes Invitational for the memory of Charlie Hughes. Great event here at Carmel, at Westfield, in the auxiliary gym, at the junior high, down at the rec center. At the rec center. They're probably playing down at the new arena, down at where the Boom will play, and I don't know. But it's fantastic right now in front of us. We got two great teams, Crown Point and Mount Vernon. Future Purdue Boilermaker star, Luke Ertl.
Yeah, he actually went down with an injury while we were a minute ago when we were doing an interview with Central Michigan associate head coach Brooks Miller. He went down with an injury and he hasn't come back in. But I can tell you this: I wish he was going to be a Hoosier.
I bet you do.
He shows a lot of flashes of Braden Smith. He's going to be the replacement for Braden Smith when he graduates. I could see him maybe having to be developed a little more and not playing off the cusp, but he has a Braden Smith approach to his game, and he's a great player for Mount Vernon. He's got them in the Hall of Fame Classic next December, and going to be one of the favorites to win the 4A state title. So we'll see.
Well, there's really only one favorite at this point to win the 4A title, but I know what you're saying. Oh, Fishers.
Absolutely. But
Yeah,
you never know.
you never know. That's right.
That's
right.
Said the same thing last year, and
Yeah, exactly.
but
And we said if there's one team that could beat them last year, it was Jeff.
Yep.
This year it might be that it's Mount Vernon.
I think
They were awfully good last year.
they were, and they went all the way to the semi-state and actually led Jeff at the end of the game, and Jeffersonville ended up winning 63-59 and went on to win the state championship.
7 with 4 minutes
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah, and that doesn't sound like a lot, but in high school, and especially in that kind of situation, you're using strategy, you're holding the ball, you're working clock. So this is an IU report, but we're talking high school hoops.
But that's what we're going to do, Grant. We are here to talk IU basketball. We're here to talk a little IU football. But most of all, we're here to talk some high school basketball and recruiting, some of these kids out here. And we're just going to wing it. We didn't really have anything planned for today, except for that we haven't had an IU report for a while, so we wanted to talk some IU basketball. And by the way, Coach DeVries is here, and we've talked to him, and he's right across the way from us and taking a look at some players.
He's a terrific guy, and when I spoke to him briefly, it's just like you and I were talking, you know. But then you realize, wow, this guy's the head coach at Indiana. You know, it's I think,
especially in Indiana.
I think a lot of people look at a figure like that and I kind of almost want to say that they're like larger than life a little bit, but when you get to know them, they're not. They're just a regular person like me and you, and you run into some great people like we had with Coach Miller, came on a few minutes ago from Central Michigan, and I'm not sure how you're planning on releasing that, but I don't know if that'll be
On its own.
okay. Yeah, so that'll be separate from here, but that'll be worth the listen. He won a Division III national championship at Trine. He was with Coach Knight at Texas Tech, so little IU connection there. Said he was an Isaiah Thomas fan growing up.
Also,
with
a big
the
Matt
Pistons.
Painter fan, so let's talk about that.
That's all right. I like Matt. If Matt Painter was here, I would love to talk to him.
IU report, Grant.
Let's talk about the fact that Matt Painter was an Indiana fan growing up, which is so ironic. And funny story that people may not, I don't know if you know this, but people may not know that he lived with Pat Knight for a summer. They played on an AAU team together, and every guy on that AAU team was from south of Indianapolis from him, and he was except him, and he was from Muncie. And he went down to stay with Pat in Bloomington with Pat's mom, Nancy, who obviously was divorced from Coach Knight in the 80s. They got divorced right after the Season on the Brink came out. Funny enough, I listened to that book the other day, and they lived together, and he tells the funny story about how they went out on the golf course to go find Coach Knight, who was out playing golf one day, and Coach Knight looks at Matt Painter and says, "Painter, when are you going to figure it out?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "Every time you get the ball on the baseline, you don't know what you're doing with it. You don't know where you're going." He goes, "You got to have a plan. Every time you get the ball down in the corner on the baseline, you got to have a plan with the basketball."
Man, did he know basketball.
And he, he grew up an Indiana fan and had that connection to Coach Knight, and he was a good player, and Coach Knight never recruited him. I don't know. He did.
He wanted so badly to play at IU. But let me tell you something, Grant.
It was divine intervention for that guy.
Let me tell you something, Grant. The whole time he was at Purdue, I wished he wasn't. When he was a player.
Why?
Because he was one of those guys who you just didn't like on your team because he seemed to be a negative on the team. And, of course, the coach loved him. Katie loved him.
Absolutely.
And played him way too much.
And that's the thing. If he would have been at Indiana and played for Coach Knight would have loved him.
Exactly.
He would have not said it to his face, but
Oh, I'm so happy now that he played all those minutes and that he's now a Purdue guy through and through. I'm so happy that they lost those games because he wasn't good enough. Because he became a Purdue guy and is a great coach.
I
I
don't.
have high expectations for my coaches and my teams, and he has far exceeded anything.
Oh, absolutely, and he deserves the success that Purdue has. I hate Purdue fans. I don't hate you. I don't hate you. No, I don't. I don't hate you. Some Purdue fans I hate, but he makes you and him, I suppose, make him tolerable. But he's a phenomenal coach. I would expect him to be here this week, and if he's not here already, and we just haven't seen him yet. But he's one of the best, and hopefully he can join us at some point. Having your IU guy interview the Purdue coach.
We could ask him about the IU stories.
I'm sure he's got some good ones.
I bet he does.
Absolutely. My favorite Purdue game of all time was in 2023.
I think we're gonna have different ones.
Yeah, my favorite game. I've had a few favorite games, but my favorite one would have to be in 2023 when they lost to Fairleigh Dickinson in the NCAA tournament. That was probably my favorite. The St. Peter's game was good. The UConn game was good. There's been some IU games that they played against them that were good, but that FDU game, that was probably my favorite. Absolutely. That doesn't take away from the fact that he's had some really good teams, though. And that is something I do respect about them.
With very low recruiting numbers.
Absolutely. Yeah, Braden Smith had offers from your MAC schools, along with Purdue and maybe a couple other big ones.
If he'd been recruited longer, he probably would have accrued some bigger schools.
Probably.
Because he committed to Purdue pretty early. But yeah, and Zach Edey, no interest. How many guys have they had that just nobody else really, their other offers were Central Michigan and, New Orleans and, stuff like that. And he just finds them. And he finds the right fit. And look, Grant, I'm a Purdue fan.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't apologize for that, even on an IU podcast.
That's okay.
I have two major sports wishes in my life. Number one could happen on Sunday.
Yes, hopefully. I'm praying.
Of distant number two is that one day Matt Painter and Darren DeVries are playing against each other in basketball games that really matter.
Yes.
Back in the 80s when Purdue and IU were playing games that really mattered. That's what I want more than anything other than a Pacers NBA championship.
Absolutely, and I would agree with you. The Pacers championship is high on my list, and hopefully that'll come true Sunday night. But an IU championship especially in basketball, I think would be probably my number one. And
I've gotten to experience that twice in my life.
What year were you born?
73. So it's actually happened
So
more than
3 times.
And I remember twice.
Okay.
I only remember twice.
Where were you in 1987?
I actually watched it at home with my family, and half of my family is IU fans, and half of us are Purdue fans.
So half was rooting for Syracuse.
No, I think we all kind of wanted IU.
Okay.
To win, you know.
Okay.
If it had been somebody more tolerable, maybe. But even when I was an IU fan growing up, I really was. I liked everything except for Bob Knight, to be honest.
Okay.
I also liked Purdue more, even in football, but I also liked IU. So we weren't like that. But we also kind of like. My dad went to IUPUI to med school, so we liked both. You know.
What was it about Coach Knight that didn't appeal to you?
He's a bully.
Okay. I understand. I truly do.
I think
I truly do.
He had a personality that probably didn't belong around children. But I admire the crap out of his basketball knowledge. He was passionate about basketball and his kids. You can't say that about all college basketball coaches for sure. A lot of good things.
He loved his kids.
Yes,
he really did.
The ones that he loved.
He
also picked on the ones he didn't.
This is something that I've always said about Coach Knight. This is something that me and my dad have always talked about. Coach Knight was fired in 2000. Whether you think he should have been fired or not is up to you. That's not what I'm talking about. He was fired in 2000, but he really quit being the coach about 1997. And I think he was there hanging out, and I think his ego wouldn't let him leave Indiana. And I think after winning his third national championship is when...
Got a little fat and happy?
A little bit. And
his ego also ballooned.
My dad tells a great story about being at his camp and going to his camp as a kid.
IU fans are going to hate me for this Bob Knight sacrilege, aren't they?
Wow, they won't hate me, so it's okay.
Okay.
My dad went to his camp as a kid, and he tells so many great stories. One story about Pat. About Pat Knight. It was after he had gotten in trouble with the law, and he actually got arrested. And he'll tell you if we see him. He'll tell you.
I remember.
And when the campers would go to eat in their dining hall, or the facility where they ate at, there's hundreds of campers lined up for food, and there's only one person that's serving all the food, and it's Pat Knight.
Oh yeah.
He left it all up them, took his car away from him, made him have to ride a bike everywhere.
Nobody ever said he wasn't a disciplinarian. That's for sure.
Absolutely. And
you were going to be disciplined.
Another great story is how he would come and speak to the campers in the dorm. See, it was his camp, but it really wasn't his. He wasn't the one, instructing at the camp, and that's usually how it is. He made
appearances.
Yeah, he made appearances here and there throughout the week, and.
I went to Taylor camp and the head coach wasn't there all the time. It's just the way it is.
So Coach Knight would come in and speak to the campers, and my dad was sitting on the opposite side of the room to where he came in, and there were kids in the back who were, jacking around or whatever before he came in, and he said that the way he commanded a room was unbelievable. And as soon as he walked in the room, your eyes were on him, and you went quiet. You were silent. Well, these kids didn't realize he came in, and he came up behind them and gave them a slap on the back or whatever, and they straightened up real quick. And he used to come and speak at the camp and would pull up with his car, which in the 80s he was driving a nice car. He would pull up with his car and come in and speak for an hour, leave the driver's side door open and leave the car running and come in and speak for like an hour. And that's just the way he was. I don't know if he did that to be funny or what.
It is funny.
And
by the way, there's a certain personality type that is a leader kind of by accident, and they probably aren't completely meant to be leaders in some way. And of course, our current president falls under that.
Absolutely.
that category. He and Bob Knight, of course, Knight was a huge fan of Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm. Endorsed him, campaigned with him.
Yeah, and they're very similar type people.
Absolutely.
And that is fantastic in some ways, and really
in other
not
ways
good
it is not.
in
I
other
agree.
ways.
I agree. A good thing I heard the other day was in the book A Season on the Brink. I've listened to that book 2 or 3 times now, and there's parts about it that I forget about. After I stop listening, there's details I forget. One of the details comes in the very first few pages of the book, where John Feinstein, the author, writes, rest in peace, by the way, one of the greatest sports authors of all time, just passed away a few months ago, but he wrote in there, if I had a nickel for every, if I had a dime for every time Bob Knight was rude, boorish, I don't know, just think of the word, think of words that are not pleasant. Obnoxious. I'd be Bill Gates. But if I had a dime or whatever for every time that he was charming, he was funny, he was polite, I'd also be Bill Gates.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, Coach Miller talked about was how funny he was. And that's one of the things that Dan Dakich talked about when he kind of memorialized him after he passed away a few years ago, was that he said, Knight was hilarious, man. Just absolutely hilarious. And, whether or not you agreed with the things he did, he was successful in doing them. I mean, he was. There's no other way to put it. He was the most popular college basketball coach in his time. Are you biting your tongue on that?
No, I think Dean Smith probably was, but it's close.
I think
definitely the most polarizing.
He was the face. Most opinions. He was definitely the face of the sport for 15, 20 years.
Sure.
Maybe less. And he kind of capped, I don't know what the word is. He kind of had the state rally around him a little bit. And there are people who didn't like him. But when you liked him because he was your coach. And people, I think, saw the good things in him. Isaiah Thomas said how he would, one day you hated him, and then the next day you just wanted to hug him. Just want to put your arms around him and hug him. But he definitely is part of the reason I've become a fan, or I became a fan when I was a kid. I never got to see him coach.
Right.
But I've gotten to read books, watch videos, listen to interviews. I've learned the lore. And he was not a complicated figure. He was not. He was simple. And if you don't think so, ask anyone who played for him. There's people in this building right now that have played for him and have coached with him and been around him. Ask them that. And I think they can answer that probably better than I can. But just one of the all-time greats. It's a shame that it ended the way it did at Indiana. He should have coached his last game at Indiana. He should have retired at Indiana. He should have broke his the all-time wins record at Indiana. But he couldn't get out of his own way. And it's like the Batman. You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. I think that's what happened with him.
All right, Grant, before we start talking some IU basketball and football,
Sorry I went on a tangent.
Oh no, that's what we're here for.
I think about those things all the time.
We're here for tangents.
Yes.
All right. Before we move on to a little IU basketball and football talk and what we're seeing out here, another one of those personalities that we talked about, Knight and Donald Trump, is Dan Dakich. Like him or hate him, man, that guy is compelling to listen to, isn't he?
He is. I've gotten the chance to meet him briefly. That Pacers game this year, I was going through security. Yeah, I was going through security, and I look over and I'm like, oh my gosh. I was like, that's Dan Dakich, and I've never met him prior. And he's one of those, and I've heard he's a lot similar to Knight in ways, in that he you either love him or you hate him. But what's different between him and Knight is that there's a lot of people that hate him than they love him. His sports takes, his commentary on IU basketball, I think is superb. I think he's right in a lot of the things he says.
So good.
He's so good, and when he says that no one knows more about Indiana basketball than him, he's right. He's right. And I think that he's able to. I think he's also kind of like Donald Trump in a way, where he has his way with words. Some of those words might be good, some of those words might be bad. We got some excited Crown Point fans over here.
Crown Point on a run, they look good.
Yeah, Crown Point, Mount Vernon. Crown Point's up 32-21 with 5:29 left in the third. But talking about Dan Dakich is that he doesn't put up with a lot of stuff. I think some of the things he has to say are wrong. A lot of things.
If they're right, they're too harsh sometimes.
Yeah, he doesn't sugarcoat anything. Exactly. Someone told me a story about him.
Compelling, man.
Someone told me a story, and I won't name who, but they told me a story about him, and that this was from a former college coach, and he was calling out one of this guy's players that was going at him on Twitter, and drugged the coach into it. And this coach happened to have a connection with Steve Alford. And this coach called up Steve Alford, and Alford called Dakich to tell him to stop because he was basically harassing this coach and this player in this guy's program. And I think he kind of gets a little out of control. This was a few years ago. He's a little more tame now than I think he was back then. But I like some of the stuff he says, and like when he was kind of memorializing Coach Knight, and that when Coach Knight came back to Assembly Hall, and you see the pictures of him, and, he's hugging Isaiah and all this, and he says he hates those pictures. And I always thought for a long time, well, I like those pictures. I don't know what's wrong with them. But then when he says what he says, and that he hates those pictures because this is a guy that doesn't know where he is. He didn't really know couldn't really process what was happening around him. And he said he hated those pictures because this was a guy that was never scared on the court, who was never scared of anything. And you see those pictures and they don't look right. And I think he's right. I'm curious what you think about it.
I love him.
Okay.
I love people who tell it like it is. It's not my style.
Would you like for him to be on the show?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I love that every second. And by the way, he's insulted me on Twitter too.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Really?
It's just who he is.
I take it personal.
No. He. And by the way, he turned out to be right as always.
Oh, absolutely.
I was wrong.
Honestly, I really like his commentary on IU stuff, but
man, he was the best college basketball commentator there was.
Yes.
The best color guy.
Yes.
It's a shame that they got rid of him because of his personality, because he was so good at that.
Yes, and the thing I like most about him is not his IU stuff and what he says. It's about what he says about the Colts. I love what he says about the Colts because he's right. He's right.
By the way, I thought he was wrong about that with Ballard. A couple of years in, I thought this guy's great. Turned out he was absolutely right.
Absolutely, and honestly, the stuff that I've missed, and his knowledge of sports beyond, I think, basketball is really good. Yeah. His wife was a softball coach at Bowling Green when he was the coach at Bowling Green.
He should be much more prominent in national sports media.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's just because people don't want to give him a chance because I think they feel like they're taking a risk that this guy's going to screw up and say something that people don't want to hear, and they're going to have to get rid of him. Yep. But the thing is,
a pretty good platform for that now.
Yeah, but the thing is that we've got guys covering the NBA Finals that are awful.
Oh, he'd be so good at it.
Yeah, because he'd put them in their place.
Oh yeah, and he's so good at breaking down games and telling you why this is happening, not just that it's happening. You know what I mean?
He's mentioned that when he was with Coach Knight at Indiana, that looking back on that feels like lifetimes ago, and it is. Him being a coach feels like lifetimes ago.
It does.
And
he was a pretty good one. Whatever people say.
What I don't like is that the fan base at Indiana doesn't embrace him. Because he's telling them the way it is, and they don't want to hear. He's an IU. I don't think people don't realize that he's an IU fan. I mean, this isn't a guy that is a Purdue fan talking about all this. This is an IU fan that has been around since the early '80s. Was there when it was in its prime.
We're not doing our job.
We're
not doing our jobs if we're not telling the truth.
Yeah,
and if you say things
because
and you sugarcoat and you pussyfoot, people will not take you seriously.
Here's the thing, Greg. Indiana basketball is going to lose a game next year. They're not going to go undefeated. It'd be nice.
Maybe.
You would hope. They're not going to go undefeated. They're probably not even going to win the national championship.
Where's Quinn Buckner when you need him?
But they're going to lose the game, and we're going to come on this podcast afterwards, and I'm going to be hot, and I'm going to be mad. And I'm like that after games. I'm mad. I've had to leave the house and go on a drive to calm me down because I'm so mad. And
That's why we love you on the podcast.
I let my emotions get into it.
Good.
I hope
I do like that.
let my emotions get into
You should have heard the Pacers podcast last night. If you don't think we like emotion in our podcast,
I've not gotten a chance to listen yet.
believe me, I don't think we said a single thing about basketball. By the way, who is? Let's get back to what's going on out here.
Yes.
Who's number 23 for Crown Point? Because he stands out like crazy.
Dikembe Shaw is that young man's name. He's explosive, and this is a 17, 18-year-old kid, and he looks like he's 22, 23.
He's got a nice handle for his size.
Yes.
And he's strong, and he's got the moves.
These are two teams that are playing in the Hall of Fame Classic next
There's
December.
his three-pointer, and that's good.
Yeah, he hit the shot.
Mr. Dikembe Shaw, we are impressed.
Do you want me to give a little play-by-play here?
Yeah, sure. Except for I don't know who anybody is.
Yeah, I don't know either. That's the
The
problem.
one guy I know is sitting over here on the bench.
Yeah, Ertl's out. When Crown Point gets the ball back.
Now, I want to hear about some of the other players
Okay.
here, of interest, not just for IU, but generally in Central Indiana basketball.
Well, a guy that's going to turn heads this week is Jason Gardner Jr. His dad was the head coach at IUPUI. He actually came to an open gym at Oak Hill High School when I was a kid, and I got to meet him and talk with him. And that was my first experience with a college coach.
National championship hero.
He's now an assistant at Arizona. He actually lost his job at IUPUI for an off-the-court incident. But his son is a great player. He's getting looked at by name the Division Ones in the Midwest. Name them.
Yeah.
He's getting looked at by them. Another guy they have is
Backcourt mate, too.
well, another guy they have is a guy named Cooper Zachary, which is the son of Randy Zachary from
He's hearing
Anderson
from all of
Highland.
them now.
Yeah,
And you talk about a legendary family in Madison County.
yeah. Dad went to
Andy
Anderson
and
Highland.
Randy, and yeah, they were great ones. They were competitive with the best.
You can find the top 15 teams to look for this weekend here at Charlie Hughes. Their schedules on there, when they're playing, who they have that's good on my website, shousehoops.com.
By the way, great site. Everybody, if you're a high school basketball fan, particularly in Central Indiana, go check it out.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And see, my goal is, and one. What a great play. Shaw took it to the rack, got hit on the arm, laid it up
Like
and
a
in.
Ben Matherin finish there.
That's kind of who he reminds me of in a way. I was talking with Coach Miller earlier. This is a guy that I'm sure they're looking at. He said they couldn't mention who they're looking at, but if you're following it, you know who they're looking at. You know who's good, and you know who they're trying to recruit.
There's only one looking at Luke Ertl, so we know who that is.
Well, he's already going there.
Exactly.
So
nobody's looking at Luke Ertl.
well, they're not looking at him because he's sitting on the bench right now.
He looks comfortable.
I'm curious as to what happened. He's a phenomenal player.
I go ask him
I just right now.
Yeah.
Let's just wait. Let's wait till after the game.
While the clock's running, he probably
Yeah,
has a good time.
probably not a good idea. His head coach is sitting right next to him. I don't think they'd like that. I just want to talk about this event for a second. This is an event that I was skeptical about, and they opened this up to college recruiting. And when I came to this for the first time in 2022, I remember walking in and seeing names like Jawan Howard when he was the coach at Michigan.
By the way, one of the 10 nicest athletes I ever met.
Oh, I've met him too. He's a great guy.
Yep. Jalen Rose also.
I've met him too.
Fantastic.
Yeah, he's
And
great.
not only were they good guys, when they were dealing with kids, when I went up to watch Matt Painter try to play against the Fab Five, speaking of which, and Matt Waddell at the time from Tipton. And Purdue was pretty good. They had Glenn Robinson. But
Did they win the Big Ten around this time, or was the Fab Five winning it?
the next year, I didn't know the Fab Five's never won the Big Ten.
Okay.
I believe
they together?
Ohio State won it the first year, and then Purdue won it the next year with Glenn Robinson. But after the game, those two were like interacting with the kids, asking them about themselves,
Yeah.
and it was one of the most impressive things I'd ever seen. Like this, changed my mind about the Fab Five. I was in
Well, they
after
were
that because, and Chris Webber, I never saw him, but the other four were always cool like that.
Well, see, they lost in the national championship game when Chris Webber called the timeout they didn't have, and he went on to the NBA, and they were then the Fab Four. After that, they lost a member, but that was one of the greatest teams of all time that never won a national championship.
And they haven't developed. That was right at the time where people were starting to go early. If it hadn't happened, like 88, you're still Danny Manning as a 4-year guy. And just a few years later, it started to happen.
He's one and done.
Yeah.
Of like 3 or 4 years later, he's one and done.
Exactly.
Christian Leitner was probably the last of his kind in that he was the last 4-year developmental player. Yep. Player that was I wouldn't say developmental, but dominant for 4 years because he stayed. And he had a disappointing NBA career, unfortunately.
A little bit.
He was on the 92 Dream Team. They actually took him over Shaquille O'Neal.
Because they needed a forward, they said.
Yeah. So, could you imagine if they had Shaq on that team?
Shaq was very raw at the time. Very raw. I'm not sure he would have contributed to that team.
Oh, he would have been like Leitner too. But think about, I think that team was great, but Leitner, I don't want to say he takes away from it.
Oh, it does.
But he's not. But he's not on the level that those guys are. His career wasn't on those levels.
Take one college player.
I don't know why.
To this
Yeah.
day, I have no idea why. And and he earned it though. He earned that spot,
It's a slam dunk right there.
Who else? Real fast. A couple of players we should be keeping an eye on.
Another guy from Fishers, Kai McGrew, 6'8", just transferred in from.
Like they didn't have enough already.
Yeah,
Lawrence North.
He transferred in from Lawrence North. A guy from Lawrence North to watch is named Brennan Miller, who's a 6'6", kind of a small forward, a power forward. He's strong, he's physical, get to the hole. He's really good. He'll be getting looked at. One guy, a team I want to mention, and I'm not just saying this because of I went there, but Oak Hill is a team that is going to be opening eyes this year. And you look at their schedule, they beefed it up a little bit. They're playing Homestead next year. They're playing Zionsville, and they're playing Marion as well, which is a rivalry that goes back days, and Oak Hill hasn't played them.
I remember watching the Giants and the Golden Eagles at Marion many times.
They haven't played each other in almost 10 years. That series went away, and they're bringing it back. Coach Blackman's going into his last year as the coach at Marion. And
which week, real fast, we reported today on the Central Indiana Scoreboard Show. If you're not watching that, if you're not listening to that, make sure you're listening to it every day. We do. It's like a ESPN radio
sports section.
Yeah, audio sports section. It's kind of like the old ESPN Radio Sports Center, except for it's focused on Central Indiana with a lot of high school sports too. We also do national sports. Anything Central Indiana fans or care about, we're going to talk about a little bit. And it's kind of our hub, and I release it every morning, 5 a.m. I hope people will come listen to it.
Oak Hill's the team that you're going to have to look out for. They just added Jaden Younts, who's a transfer from Eastbrook.
I had no idea.
You didn't know that?
He's a good one.
He averaged about 12 or 13 a game last year at Eastbrook. And then you have Jace Tonigal. Yeah, and then you have Jace Tonigal, who's going to be a junior. Then you add his brother, Will Tonigal, who is he's a top 5 player. It may be the top-ranked player in his class in the state of Indiana. So, and this is just a little small farm school on State Road 18 that's going to be doing all that. And then not to mention you have R.J. Shugart as well, who's started going, he'll be a 3-year starter for them. He was on the baseball team that had success and went to the semi-state. It's funny, it's kind of ironic because I called the Oak Hill baseball game. They lost to Wapahani, and RJ struck out to end the game. He was the final out of the game. An hour and a half later, he was in a basketball jersey at a shootout there at IWU, playing in the game, an hour and a half after the baseball game. And so and that was his first game he was able to play in, and he'll be able to play this weekend. They play Saturday and Sunday. Yeah, they're going to be a team to look out for, and with playing teams like Zionsville and Homestead and Marion, I got a good confident I have a good confident feeling that they have a shot to win maybe 2 out of 3 of those. So we'll see.
By the way, Maury Leggett and the Blackford Bruins are also here. They're going to be awfully good, and the CIC as well. Lots of local teams. I think I read it off on the scoreboard show today. It was like 30 teams. So pretty much everybody's here. Wapahani, Westville, from Delaware County Delta. And you go up to Western, of course, Coach Bennington, who might join us here in a few minutes.
Taylor.
Oh yeah, Taylor's going to be awfully good next year. We definitely know they got 3 spots filled because those was one of the best threesome last year. None of them were seniors.
Yeah.
So
Alexandria, did you mention them?
Frankton, of course.
Yep.
So yeah, pretty much everybody's here. Get out here and watch some basketball. It's what's it cost to get in
$15.
for the day?
Yes.
For the day.
And it's a cash-only event. That's what I'm being told.
All right, let's talk some IU basketball. How you feel about the roster and where the program is now that it's kind of solidified?
I would say I'm excited. I'm hopeful. I like the coach. Doing everything I can to believe that they're going to be successful. And it's hard. It's kind of like being in an abusive relationship. You get into another relationship that's not abusive, and you're almost expecting to get abused a little bit. You know what I mean? That's just the analogy I'm making here.
Yeah, of course. Everybody knows what you mean.
And so
Settle for a little better.
yeah, you're optimistic, you're hopeful in what can happen. I think Coach DeVries is going to lead them to good places. I think the goal.
But will it be this year?
Well, I don't know because the Big Ten's going to be it's going to be a gauntlet, so we'll find out. But I like the addition, of course, of Tucker DeVries. I think is going to be their star guy. You know, he's going to be an All-American candidate that's going to play a significant amount.
I like the guy from Florida.
I do too.
Transfer from Florida.
Yeah.
I think he's going to make a big difference.
I think the roster is. I think it's going to turn heads a little bit. I think it's going to be good. I'm looking forward to seeing when they release their non-conference schedule. I'm really looking forward to that because I think they could play one of their better non-conference schedules they have since maybe the Crean administration. Say administration. I'm kidding.
No, I know what
but,
you're saying. That's what it is. It's an administration.
Pretty much. Pretty much.
If they're over 500, though, you got to think that's a heck of a good season in the Big Ten.
Oh, I think they just need to make the NCAA tournament. Get in the tournament. I mean,
you like the chances of that?
I do. As of right now in June, I do. Ask me that at the end of November.
I see a full roster reshuffle and have a ton of success. We saw a little bit of it last year. The teams that did it weren't as good as they were expected to be. But I think we're looking 2-3 years down the road, you got a stable program. There's no reason they can't return to the national prominence. No reason.
You would hope so, and I just want them to be competitive again.
Me too.
You know, it's like MIGA, make Indiana great again. You know, I mean, that's just what I think about it. So
let's talk some football before we go look for some guests.
We need to go recruit. We need to go recruiting after this game.
We do. We need to go recruiting. Recruiting the recruiters. Practice is we're not far.
I looked today. They're 71 days away from Old Dominion. So
how many days till first practice?
Soon.
First official practice.
It'll be at the beginning of August when they'll start their fall camp. And those are good because then you start to get weekly updates from the coach and that there's a press conference every week. So the hope is when those start to come around, you start to break down those press conferences and what he says on the IU report every week. And you mentioned it earlier. I think we're going to have 45 of them every year, maybe minimum. Yeah, minimum of 45 a year. So this is probably, and we've been saying this, I feel like in the last few, but this is probably. It's probably the last, I think, full feature-length one we'll have till about August.
Yeah.
So until Indiana will release its non-conference basketball schedule. Yeah, I mean.
And there could be.
There could. So
man,
I'm real hopeful about that football team. Those season tickets are going to be put to good use. What?
Really hopeful about the football
Last
team.
year. I said it
last year. You did not expect them to contend for a national championship. Come on. There's no IU fan in the world that expected what happened.
Let me talk.
No, you're not going to convince me that you.
That's not what I'm going to say.
All right.
I remember thinking, listening to Coach Sig talk. I remember thinking, if they do what he says they're going to do, they're going to be good.
Of course.
Here's my thing: as a fan, if they had gone 8-4,
exactly
9-3, we'd still be doing
exactly. Even 7-5 with a close loss somewhere, we'd be doing this.
Still be doing this.
Joe Tiller, when he came to Purdue,
I'd still have season tickets.
That's right.
I mean,
Joe Tiller, when he came to Purdue and turned things around with the Purdue program, was nothing like this. It was amazing what Joe Tiller did, and this was next level, man. Next level.
It is one of the greatest comeback stories in sports of the year. And
it was one of the great football stories of my lifetime.
Oh, absolutely. I'll remember it for the rest of my life. And last year's college football season was probably the most fun. I think not even just from Indiana. I just thought all the games were good every week. The matchups were good every week. The playoff was superb. It was great.
And I said about 6 weeks in, I still wasn't convinced. And then was it Maryland?
It was Nebraska that really everybody was like, okay.
There was that run, and then they go to Washington without their quarterback.
I was at that game.
And then the Michigan State game, watching it, they were down 10-0, and I said,
this is where they'll slip up.
No. I said, this team is way better than that Michigan State team. You could see it.
And then they scored 47 unanswered.
You could see it on the field. They were better than these teams with lesser recruits, with a brand new system.
Don't get me wrong.
Unreal.
Don't get me wrong.
Unreal.
I did not think they'd beat Ohio State.
No,
I'll take that back. I was optimistic and hopeful, but deep down I kind of knew they wouldn't beat Ohio State. I didn't think they'd beat Notre Dame. I knew they wouldn't beat Notre Dame, but I was going to come on here and say that they were. Absolutely, I was. But I kind of knew that they were going to be.
I'm not going to do that, by the way. I'm still not sure the Pacers are going to win. You'll get my prediction later in the week.
Okay. I just really liked the fact that this rallied people around each other. And see, there's a lot of people that they were bandwagons on this. Yeah. They were bandwagons until about when they were 5 or 6-0. I've watched every IU football game that I've been able to watch for, years now, since I was a youngster, as they say.
Yep. It's like I said about the Pacers in 1994 to all my friends. You're all welcome on the bandwagon. Just remember who was here first.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean,
I was never not on the Pacers. By the way, my uncle played for the Bulls, and I was still a Pacers fan.
I know.
So that's how deep my Pacers fan. The thing with me.
Does your brother work for the Pacers?
No, my brother.
Kinda.
No, my brother. Oh, he does now. Yeah.
Johnny.
Yeah. Johnny does. Yep. And my other brother was ball boy for Michael Jordan and the Bulls.
Really?
Yeah, and his favorite team was the Pacers. That was the thing with my family. In my family, the NFL, we all had different teams. I told you about IU, Purdue, half and half.
It's got a split.
Yeah.
Everybody loved the Pacers.
Baseball was split. We were all split. My brothers liked the White Sox. I liked the Reds. My mom was the Yankees. But when it came to the NBA, every single one of us, including my sister, who doesn't even care much about sports, loved the Pacers, and that's why they run so deep with me. And plus, I was the first one on the bandwagon.
Yeah.
And Jeff Hester, who I interviewed earlier. We were the only two, man.
Yeah.
Everyone else in my class was a Celtics, Lakers, Bulls fan until 1994. And it's hard to blame them.
And it goes back to the IU football thing, in that I believed from the start that they could be good. I was joking around after Oakland beat Kentucky in the NCAA tournament in 2024.
Yeah.
That was awesome. That was awesome.
High five. Oh, make a snap.
That was awesome because
it was a really bad high five for those of you listening.
Yeah. Hopefully, and the people looking around at us right now, everybody's looking at us in the gym. They're like, geez, what?
If they knew what we were high-fiving, they all would be high-fiving, too.
They would.
A Kentucky loss is always worth high-fiving.
And I went around saying that I was an Oakland fan after that. So when
I bought a T-shirt.
Did you really?
Yeah.
I know Coach
I used to
Hampton.
have a tradition that I'd buy a T-shirt of whichever team knocked Kentucky out of the. I hate Kentucky more than I like Purdue. How about that?
That's a good idea. It's a
They're
good
the
idea.
worst, man. Yeah, I have lots of cool. I had a Wisconsin T-shirt. I had a. My favorite was
Robert Morris?
Robert Morris.
Yeah, Robert Morris.
That was my favorite T-shirt. Was my Robert Morris T-shirt.
I think we should go start recruiting guests.
Bobby Moe.
Bobby Moe.
Well, we're looking forward to IU football season, IU basketball season, and lots of great basketball this weekend, Grant. Of course, Grant is our IU guy, but he's also very passionate about high school sports. He has a website, and it's awesome. You're going to want to go check it out. Shousehoops.com. Grant, tell us about what you're going to be doing at shousehoops.com.
Yeah, this time is a big time for the website, and that you're constantly seeing games, and so I'll have by the end of the weekend I'll have a kind of a recap put on there. I've been saying this. It may not be to the middle of the week, and that because I'll be so busy, and that Sunday night the Pacers are playing. So win or lose, I'll be up late. The next morning, I'm getting up early in the morning and going with my girlfriend and my mom and my sister down to Holiday World.
Ooh.
So, especially if the Pacers win, I may not be sleeping Sunday night. It's going to be a long, dragged out day on Monday. So,
at least you'll be having fun.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I'll try to have a notebook kind of to recap the weekend, just give my thoughts a little bit. Some of the teams I saw that were good, what impressed me, who was good, who wasn't. And next weekend is another big weekend in Super Hoops, which is hosted at Indiana Wesleyan and around Grant County. So right in my backyard. It's a tradition every year. Last year was not a good year for it, just to be frank. So hopefully expectations are it'll be better this year. And it's a part of it is because last year this Charlie Hughes and Super Hoops, which are kind of the two main summer shootouts, overlapped with each other. So all the good teams were here playing, and all kind of the not so good teams were playing at Super Hoops. So the basketball wasn't that great, but next weekend I expect it to be good. There's hundreds of games. I think there's over 600 games that'll take place from C team level all the way up to varsity level next weekend there at Super Hoops. I'll be there for that, be covering that, have updates and scores all throughout the day from there. So it's gonna be a fun day, and we'll hopefully get a report back from this weekend or share my story on my website, and hopefully we can do this again next week, and then we'll get into July, and we are going to be bored, and I'm sorry, excuse me for saying this, we're going to be bored as hell waiting for high school sports to start back up.
He's right, unless you're a huge baseball fan, WNBA, IndyCar. If you're a basketball and football person, like a lot of people in the country are now these days, the next few weeks are pretty rough. But every time there's IU news, Purdue news, Pacers news, Colts news, IndyCar news, Fever news, Ball State, Butler, we will be here. That's our job. Please go subscribe and tell your friends and family about the Central Indiana Sports Report. Appreciate it.